prayers and push-ups. Today we're going to be talking about weaponizing the environment, why that's important, why that matters. I'll just get right to the punchline. Situational awareness, understanding how to be comfortable in a room, right? The philosophy of prayers and push-ups is, first of all, we got to start off. Sometimes, some people are just predatory by nature and they underestimate who's in the room. But for the most part, predators will only attack those that are giving off weakness as energy. I've been raising huskies for over 10 years, 13 actually, traveled all over the world. And I have found that when you are at the lowest vibrational level, you function very much like you would in the animal kingdom. Really, there's only three types of energy when you get down to the basics, and it's predator, prey, and protector. And we cycle in all three depending on our circumstances, right? We're not always protectors. We try to be, right? Sometimes we fall into our baser instincts and we're predatory, right? I mean, nobody's perfect except for one, and we are not him. So we do our best. And in doing so, we must understand our nature, right? That's part of divinity, right? Becoming as if, and in that way, we're able to understand our spirit, right? But we must overcome the flesh, and that requires work, and that requires a materialization of what we are, right? Man, right? Okay, and it feels like I'm getting off topic, but I'm not. Because the entire point of all this is to re-engage masculinity from a divine perspective, and we do so under the direction of sort of our masculine guidance, right? And so, why a yoga strat, and why does this matter? Situational awareness, being able to walk in a room with confidence, allows you to not give off a prey instinct, right? So it signals to the other predators that you're either a fellow predator or you're a protector. That does not mean that you will not be attacked. And I'm talking about energetically, but it also manifests itself physically, Right behind me, we have Max. Max is our gym predator. And when I talk about masculinity, right, I don't mean it to be specifically only for men, right? This is about energy, right? And how we sit in different types of energy. There's a gender component to it. Although, just to be very clear, you're born with what you're born with, and you should just make do with what you got. But it does take work. So, what does that mean? We've got our gym predator here. We'll call him Max. The reason we use a dummy is because, and this is what I found in a lot of, in fact, this is one of the reasons I started doing these videos with prayers and push-ups, is because I found that a lot of the videos that I saw online were just ridiculous, right? You'd have I'm like 6'3", right? You'd have a guy my height, and you'd have either a really small dude or like a smaller woman, you know what I mean? And with that size discrepancy, you would see these like crazy stunts where it'd be like, they grab the hands and you're like, wait, and you jab, and you finger jab, and you groin kick, and all of that is just wrong, okay? I've had 30 years of martial arts training. I grew up in the rough streets of Los Angeles in the 80s. I've been the recipient of many street fights, all unwilling, growing up. So I have real life experiences. And I can tell you one thing. If you are much smaller than the person attacking you, unless you have friends or unless you use a weapon, you're screwed, right? It's just how it is. If I'm fighting a guy, who outweighs me by 50 pounds, he weighs 250, 260, I'm probably going to get my ass kicked, even with 30 years of training, even with real life experience, unless God wills otherwise, or unless I use a weapon. And in today's day and age, you are discouraged in every conceivable way in using a weapon, right? It's self-defense. Don't fool yourself. In the courts, it's difficult to prove. Lots of folks get in trouble over it. It's best to avoid any and all altercations. So if you are let me repeat that, just to be clear. If you are much smaller than the person that you are engaging with, or is that engaging you in violence, most likely you're going to lose and be very badly hurt. So you just got to run. Sometimes you can't, right? So why do we practice these drills? Okay, we practice these drills to ground our masculinity and our energy in the protector mode. That way you're not either in prey mode, afraid of the environment, or in what I would like to call, I guess, false confidence mode, which is all a predator is. It's just false confidence, right? Because they're just going after weaknesses. And as soon as you misjudge your weakness, you become prey, right? So really, your only bet as a true masculine warrior for the divine is as a protector. But how do you do that? I mean, you might be born with the instinct of how to protect, but you still have to engage your body in that mechanism, right? So this is why we're doing this, and I'm using yoga strap. I don't see mostly because I find it ironic and kind of funny, but we're going to weaponize this yoga strap, right? Because this is what we're doing. We're grounding our masculinity instead of being like, yeah, I'm not making fun of anybody specifically, so if you take this personally, then, I don't know, get triggered, I guess, I don't care. But if you're talking about warrior energy all the time, and you've never been in a fight, you've never been physically aggressed upon, you've done all these soft movements, in the air, right? All this stuff, and all the salutations you want, you're still probably going to get your ass kicked. So it's not enough to just think about being a warrior and meditate on it. A mindset requires activation, right? And that's what we're doing with prayers and push-ups. We're activating the warrior instinct in a safe environment. So now that you've got my disclaimer, where it's coming from, why I find the yoga strap ironic, we're going to engage in order to stimulate that warrior instinct and then jump right into the bench press, okay? I focus mostly on bench press because, and I was taught this, right? This is all wisdom that's come from many men who have, mighty men, I guess you could say, who have pulled me aside and said, hey man, you're doing it this way, try this other thing, right? And it's just been kindness. And this is how these secrets have been passed down for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And I've been lucky enough to be a recipient of a lot of them throughout my now nearly 50 years on this planet, in that dudes would just pull me aside and say, hey bro, think of it this way, or do this, or this tweak, right? So I'm trying to pass that on, because it's really helped. Frankly, I'm in great shape. Knock on wood, no steroids, no additives, no surgeries, it's all good, right? And it's, pulling on half a century here. So what I want to get around to that is I want to start kind of giving some of that back. So here we go. So when you think about bench press, think about you're pushing somebody off of you, because in most engagements, men, when they engage, rarely does it go to combat unless it's like you're in jail or, you're really getting, somebody's trying to jack you, right? Most of the time what'll happen is what I've seen, right? I don't go out to clubs anymore. I don't drink, right? There's a lot of things that I do to avoid all those situations, but I see them online a lot, and I see a lot of very foolish advice, so I'm addressing it. Most of the time, it'll come to a shoving match, and the reason why that happens is because like two, I guess elk or something like that, right? Like they're locking horns and they're engaging in that tug of war, and they're mostly just trying to figure out who's stronger, right? And so if you're really good at pushing somebody off of you, you're going to avoid 99%, of fights out there, and you're going to signal that it's going to be difficult, right? And again, you're now either predator, prey, protector. So if you're pushing somebody with everything you've got and they're flying halfway, across that club floor, probably not prey. So either you're another predator, which makes them want to go look for somebody who is prey, or you're a protector, which is the predator's worst nightmare, right? Okay, so here we go. So yoga strap, I've got Max the Predator. I'm the chosen protector of the day. And again, trying to get to the gym. This guy grabs me. So I'm not going to explain this one because it's honestly complicated, but you can play it back to slow motion if you want. That's the whole benefit of the video. But for the most part, anything that's a strap can be used to guide a limb, a throat, right? And the key is to understand that there's a motion. This is where all the stunt stuff, all the super agent stuff I'm pumped. I'm not gonna waste this pump with more talking. I'm just gonna get right to the bench. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.